Hey everybody, Mike Naso here with a tropical video update, and I wanted to note, because it is September 11th, obviously it's the anniversary of the attacks in New York and Washington and the plane that crashed in Pennsylvania, but I had some comments on the YouTube page asking about the hurricane that was off the east coast of the United States on September 11th, 2001. For those who might not know, or you might not have been alive, I was a teenager that year and I was tracking hurricanes. And we did have a hurricane off the East Coast. Now, when you look at that picture of the World Trade Center, stormy skies all around, that picture was taken on Monday, September 10th, 2001, the day before the attacks. And what's interesting is everybody remembers the attacks happening on such a gloriously beautiful day. They tend to forget the day before, there were hellish thunderstorms in New York City with a front that was departing the East Coast. That is where we get into our hurricane. Hurricane Aaron. Aaron developed from a tropical wave that left Africa in early September, and it was one of the best looking tropical waves I've ever seen. Ever. This thing was a huge blob. We knew it was going to be a hurricane, but it really struggled. It became a tropical storm, and then it dissipated northeast of the islands, and it regenerated back into a storm, and then a hurricane, and then a major hurricane, a Category 3, and it moved just east of Bermuda, and it took a beeline in the direction of New England. But we did not fear a landfall because we knew there was that giant trough that was going to sweep off the eastern seaboard and turn Aaron away. The trough was a little bit late, just a little bit, so Aaron got a little closer than we would have liked, but we knew it was going to do a direct right hook and then out to sea, and that's exactly what Hurricane Aaron did. It was a run-of-the-mill out-to-sea Category 3. This satellite imagery shows it interacting with the front as it was turning straight to the right away from areas of New England and Cape Cod. But that was on September 11th, and if you look closely on this visible satellite, there's the plume of smoke from the World Trade Center towers in lower Manhattan. So a lot of people see this and they're like, you gotta be kidding me. There was a hurricane when 9/11 happened and conspiracies and aliens and who the hell knows what else. When you look at it from it was a very normal out-to-sea hurricane that just happened to be turning away on that September morning when all those events took place. But that's what happened September 10th, September 11th, the climatological peak of hurricane season. And today, same thing. A big old hurricane out there in the form of Hurricane Lee. We have another hurricane. This is Margot. And Margot is now expected to become a Category 2. It looks like Margot will be an overachiever, but that should stay out at sea. The biggest concern for land would probably be this developing system near Africa's two invests that are merging together, and the long-range models show this could make it further west than Lee even did, and we'll have to watch it very carefully. Here's the latest on Hurricane Lee as of 11 p.m. Lee was at 23.9 north, 64.8 west, 115 miles per hour. It hasn't strengthened much. It's a solid Category 3, a major hurricane, but it has expanded its wind field because of the eye wall replacement cycle. I'll show you that in a second. And that should allow it to maintain major hurricane strength, maybe get a little stronger. We'll see. It's moving west-northwest at 7 as it rounds the periphery of that ridge. Not periphery, the periphery of the ridge. It will then accelerate to the north and eventually become post-tropical by the weekend. However, it could get very close here to Nova Scotia to have a direct impact. And Maine and Cape Cod, these areas here are still in the cone of uncertainty. So it's always possible. If it takes the left edge, we could have a direct impact. If it takes the right edge, it could directly go over Bermuda and head towards Newfoundland. Right now, we think in between. So somewhere to the west of Bermuda and the east of Cape Cod. But really, that puts the Atlantic Canada there, Nova Scotia, right in the crosshairs of whatever energy Lee wants to sail right up into that area. As I mentioned, the wind field has expanded. It was a much smaller hurricane days ago. Now the hurricane force winds extend outward 80 miles from the center. In fact, there's a sail drone out there that recorded a 105-mile-an-hour wind gust well outside the eye of the hurricane. So this is a fat donut, and it's only going to get larger through time, even if it weakens. Look at this satellite imagery, the infrared. Note the coil here. See this snake-like coil? This is a good indicator of the eye wall replacement cycle. An eye wall replacement cycle, ERC. Basically, think of the way a reptile sheds its skin, you know? Same thing with a hurricane. The eye wall will shrink, and around the eye of the hurricane it'll strengthen, and then a new outer eye wall starts to take shape, and then eventually the inner one disintegrates, and the new outer one becomes a bigger, fatter eye, and then that one shrinks, and it goes on forever. Well, the good news is that usually hurricanes weaken during this, and it does look like this has kept Lee from intensifying anymore, is having trouble getting a new eye without any inner core problems, and that could keep it kind of in that 100 to 120 mile an hour range. So would you rather have a large 115 mile an hour hurricane or a very tiny 140 mile an hour hurricane? Depends what you're looking for. Now, what we don't want with the large wind field are the swells, which will be very strong, and rip tides. These rip currents all along areas there of the Turks, Caicos, Bahamas, and the southeast coast. So this will all propagate away from the hurricane. I'm trying to look for signs of wind shear. I see a little flattening. Do you see that flattening there? I'd like to see it look a little more like that. So it still could be dealing with some dry air near the core and a little bit of wind shear, but not enough to keep it from being a very powerful hurricane. Our other hurricane, Margot, is up to 80 miles an hour. It's at 28.0 north, 39.6 west, moving north at 12. Now, the great thing with Margot is it should remain out over open water, but still be a hurricane by Saturday. So it's not going anywhere anytime soon, and it's going to probably peak as a Category 2, 100 miles an hour. Like I said yesterday, the Hurricane Center agrees. This thing's going to be an overachiever. Here it is on the satellite, and watch right at the end, that little eye. Watch right in here. See that eye develop? That is an eye of a hurricane. So we definitely have a developing hurricane, and that's something that looks like it's getting up towards 80, 85 miles an hour. Note the very impressive outflow there to the north and east of the hurricane. Now we have two invest areas. This is Invest 97L. This is the wave we've been watching, and the computer models take it west-northwest, maybe a bend back to the west by the time it gets north of the islands. Then we have a wave that just departed Africa. This is Invest 98L. They name them 90, 91, all the way through 99, and L for Atlantic. That's how we keep track of tropical waves and areas of interest. This 98L is expected to merge with 97 and take a track something like this. So we could be dealing with a storm moving in the general direction of where Lee moved, maybe even further west than that, which is why we have to watch it so carefully. Taking a look at the satellite, there's the first system, and here's the second system, and obviously there's some kind of merging interaction between the two, and we'll kind of see them just kind of lollygag for a while and then take that track towards the west-northwest, and that's going to be the next system to watch here. TropicalTidbits.com, Levi Cohen, he does a lot of good videos too. This is the GFS ensemble, and it shows where they're generally expecting areas of disturbed weather. Here's Hurricane Lee. Watch it move to the north, okay? So watch that carefully. Lee moves off to the north, and then watch around a week from now. Here comes another system. Now, some have it in the Caribbean, some have it north, many have it turning, but that is much further west than Hurricane Lee. And if Lee is here and this system's here, we could deal with it much closer to land, even though that's a long way away. Watch further as we get into September 26th, 27th, all the way out in the long range, indications that we'll have some kind of activity affecting land. So I'd watch the tropics, even if you're in the islands or Florida or the Caribbean. We aren't done with hurricane season yet, I don't think. The long-range ensembles, this is the European again, showing the system bending back west. Now, it's entirely possible we could have it turn like Lee, but you don't want it to get too far west, and this is pretty far west. That's exactly where Lee is, if not further west, and the GFS is no better. They have the system, some of them headed for the Caribbean, some of them in the Caribbean. So we're going to watch that, and then even more systems over areas of the Cape Verde Islands after that. So again, watching the tropics, we have a lot to talk about, a lot to cover over the next few days. The main focus is going to be Lee. If you are in Bermuda, if you are on the eastern seaboard of the United States and Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, you guys in red there need to be prepared for a potential direct impact, to say nothing of the high swells and surf and rip currents that are going to be very dangerous in this area for the next few days. I'm Mike Naso with the latest on the tropics, and I will talk to you next time. Stay tuned.